The Commission of Inquiry finds it difficult to accept President Jacob Zuma's version that he did not know about the infamous Waterkloof lending. In Volume 2 of the fifth and final report into state capture, which looks at the Waterkloof lending, the Commission notes that the probabilities are overwhelming that Zuma knew about the plans for a private aircraft to land at the Waterkloof Military Air Base and had no objections to plans being implemented. The plane carried over 200 guests who were invited to attend the Gupta family lavish wedding at Sun City in Northwest in 2013. The Commission further noted that it is hoped that an incident like the Waterkloof lending will never happen again in this country. The role of multinational companies in state capture is expected to become clearer when the final report is made public. Many activists have raised concern that some corporates have used their resources to escape heavy punishment when they've been implicated in state capture. For whistleblowers, the message is clear: big business must not be allowed to get away with murder.
The Gupta family, the alleged masterminds behind the capture of the state for their benefit. The two Gupta brothers, Atul and Rajesh, have since been arrested in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. The South African government is now engaged in a process to try and extradite the two to South Africa to account for their alleged involvement in fraud and corruption activities. However, there are concerns that the involvement of the multinational companies in state capture is not properly highlighted. Among companies that were implicated are Bain, Glencore, and others from countries such as China.
What I'm now expecting from the British government is to say that all companies that operate in the United Kingdom must do so within the normal rules of proper, honest business practice, and that if they get involved in corruption and state capture, as the Zondo Commission report showed had happened to Bain were up to their necks in the corruption and getting enormous fees for it as well, then they must not be allowed to operate in other countries. Because we've got to call a halt to this. This is the wholesale looting under former President Zuma and the Gupta brothers could not have happened without Bain & Co., without the KPMGs, without McKinsey, SAP, and then the banks, HSBC, Standard Chartered, and Bank of Baroda. They were all involved in facilitating the corruption. It took two to tango, not just corrupt politicians and business people, but also global corporates that helped themselves to masses of fees and in return ensured that this corruption and looting continued and the money laundering out of the country by the billions of rot.
There's a tendency to go for smaller men and women when countries are dealing with an issue of corruption. But the big guns, people with influence, people in high offices get away with murder. Do you think in this case it will be a different outcome?
Well, I'm not sure. I wrote the letter to Prime Minister Boris Johnson because I want action. It's no good making speeches in the British Parliament saying we don't like corruption and we don't like money laundering and we've got strict laws and everybody's got to abide by the rules. If companies, if global corporates break the rules in another country, they should be punished at home as well. All of these banks, all of these corporates, including Bain & Company, are either headquartered here in London, from where I'm speaking from the British Parliament, or they have big offices here, and they are supposed to comply with the anti-corruption, anti-money laundering legislation that is on the British statute book. It is the law of the country. And yet in South Africa they didn't. And so you can't have one law for operating in South Africa and maybe developing countries across the world, and then another law for operating in the UK or the USA or Europe. It's got to be the same. And if you are going to be complicit and conspire with corrupt politicians to loot as a global corporate, then you should be punished globally as well. That seems to me to be the principle that we've now got to establish in countries like the UK and countries like the USA and across Europe as well. Because all of these global corporates are desperate to do business, not just in the South Africas of this world, but in the United States, in the UK, in these big economies. And when they start hurting in these big economies, which is the purpose of my letter to the Prime Minister asking him to take action against Bain & Company, if they start hurting here, then they won't allow themselves to be dragged into corruption in other countries in Africa, Latin America, Asia or elsewhere.
Mining giant Glencore recently entered into agreements with the United States of America and the United Kingdom to pay hefty fines after the company was implicated in fraud and corruption in different countries around